Hey guys, today on the Manhire Show, we talked about Halo ODST and the removing of police nameplates to misconceptions about the Civil War, and ended off with a really good debate on how to end racism in 2020. So stay tuned and enjoy.
Welcome to the Manhire Show. I'm Dad.
I'm Jack.
I'm Will.
And I'm Mike.
All right, and we have Sophie on the board. Welcome, Sophie.
Yay. Be fun.
Start us off, Jack, because I really don't have... I have some stuff.
Wait a second. You're the one that said you wanted to do a cast tonight.
Okay,
it was 2 nights ago that
Okay.
I was like, I'm out of material.
Okay, I'll start with my stuff.
I have stuff.
Do you have stuff too?
I do have stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Jack always has stuff. I always have stuff, yeah. Never run out. I have like 3 weeks stuff on here, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have a couple different things. It depends on where I want to start, I guess.
Jack, did you hear something about like riots in Scandinavia, meaning like Sweden and Finland?
I guess that'll start.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody. One thing that I thought was really interesting, just because we never talk about video games, I think this ties in current political climate with video games. So 343 Industries. So I know you know what Halo is. All of you guys know what Halo is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So Halo is remastering and re-releasing all of their games in the Master Chief Collection. So, and they do it like in sequence, so it's not all at once, at least on PC. So they're re-releasing Halo 3 ODST, so the game after Halo 3, in between 3 and Reach.
Yes.
And in this re-release, they've removed Police Siren's nameplate from Halo 3. And I don't know exactly what that means. I just know that it has to do with the police.
Oh.
And they removed the nameplate of like...
So it doesn't say police?
Yeah, any reference to the police.
Wow.
And so this article by... C-I-A-N. How would you say that first name?
Cyan?
Cyan, yeah. Cyan Maher.
Cyan?
M-A-H-E-R, Maher.
Maher.
Maher. Okay, so
Cyan
Cyan Maher. Basically, he says that all of the people that are for keeping the nameplate are alt-right activists, and that it makes a ton of sense in today's political climate to just remove any semblance of the police in video games and in all media.
But isn't that what we're seeing everywhere?
Yeah.
Where if you are against the defunding of the police, if you're against removal of the police on a classic video game, if you're against canceling the reruns of Starsky and Hutch or Chips or some type of 70s thing, you're an alt-right fascist.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
In other words, if you're against full cancellation of anything police, you're an alt-right fascist. So I'm going to call you a name, and if you disagree with me, but what you're doing is, this is what we learn in law school.
Okay.
First week of law school, you learn he who frames the issue first wins the case. It doesn't matter, as long as you frame the issue, then you get to control who's gonna win in the sense of this. Here, it's exactly what's happening here. I'm going to frame the issue. I'm going to frame the issue to saying anybody who agrees with removing the police is good and for liberty and for truth and justice and Superman and American Pie. Anybody who's against it is a Hitler. Okay, so then I get somebody on the stand. So are you against removing of the police?
Right.
And the jury's like, oh, Hitler.
What was that, stickman argument or straw man
There's
argument?
a straw
Is that
man
what
argument
that
where
is?
you set up an argument and then you tear it down.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
this isn't actually doing a straw man argument, but it's just framing the issue to say, I'm going to define the terms.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to define who's good and who's bad. And this is the only way around this is to say, I'm not going to play the game. I completely disagree with the premise. I disagree with the premise that anybody who says you shouldn't remove police from the video, this particular video game, it's not all, because that's what they do too. They do these sweeping statements, right? You have to agree on everything. Like, no, let's just talk about this one video game. This is the only issue before us, right? This is how you kind of take control back of the situation. And to say, am I an alt-right fascist if I think that Halo in the Master Chief series, this particular vehicle should not have police removed from it, right?
Yeah.
Well, everybody, no, not everybody. I'm talking about this particular one and this particular. That's the only way to take something back if they start to frame the issue in this wild, crazy way. I do not see anybody on the legitimate right, not the alt-right, the legitimate right, taking the issue back.
Yeah.
I hear some people framing the issue like this crazy guy.
He states it super crazy. I can read the little excerpt.
Please do.
So basically what he says is the news comes from, this is an exact quote, the news comes from Reset Era, where a poster compiled a string of tweets from alt-right Halo players who reacted to the revelation in an incredibly poor fashion. Obviously, the plate was removed from the game due to the atrocious degree of police brutality that erupted in the U.S. earlier this year. An ostensibly sensible decision, but one that has caused a stir among the exact people who would likely use it to harass others.
And that's his quote?
That's it. He's saying this.
Yeah. So this
is his take on
am
what's
I correct that he said, "Oh, the reason I'm right on this is because I have this informal survey of quote unquote alt-right video game players"?
Well, he just saw a bunch of tweets, and he's saying that anybody that tweeted.
Oh, so he's already he's just classifying them.
It's just a list of people that are upset that this has gotten removed, and they're vocalizing it on Twitter. And he's saying that those people are alt-right activists or alt-right people, and that they would likely use this in the game to harass other people.
And you notice what he's doing there too with the argument. He's saying, okay, I went and basically surveyed the alt-right Twitter community, and I found that they were all in favor of police. Well, how do you know they were alt-right? Well, because I said they were.
Yeah.
Because they disfavored the police. So you're now it's a circular argument, right? Alt-right is disfavoring the removal of the police placard from the game. How do you know they're alt-right? Because they disfavored the removal of the police.
Exactly.
So I bet you it's 100%. Am I right? It's 100. You're right, Jack. It's 100%. Wow, that's amazing. You can predict that. So these are completely lunatic arguments in the sense that they are illogical in the classic Greek sense of logic. The syllogism isn't there. You know, if all cats are orange and Tom is orange, he's a cat. That's an illogical syllogism, right?
Yeah.
If everything orange is a cat and Tom is orange, then he is a cat.
Right.
Now, by the way, that's not factually correct, but it's logical.
Right.
You see, that defies both truth and logic.
Yeah.
Because logic can defy truth.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's absolutely ridiculous.
I read it and I was really upset. I was like, how?
Yeah.
But why are you even saying this? Because I think.
Well, why is he saying it? Is he in charge of the game or something?
No, not at all. He's. Let me find exactly. I have it saved, but I have it saved on Pocket, so it's not.
Is he some law professor who hasn't been able to be published for 5 years, so he needs to find some reason to get his name out there?
Yeah.
I know folks.
Whatever he did, though, his name is out there now. So.
Yeah, that's right. Sion Maher, or Sion Maher, the author, or Sion Maher, the guy who's saying.
I think
this.
Grand Theft Auto.
That's one who's saying
they
it.
did like infamous press or something. You know, where they're just saying a bunch of stuff to get press towards their game or towards their.
Well, he doesn't work for the game at all. He's writing for VG 24/7, like Video Games 24/7, which is an apparently popular video game news site.
Well, I guess that's what you can do now, kind of like what you're saying about your peers that you know that do this in law, of that you can just say something so shocking that it's going to grab so much attention that it's going to bring attention to your name or to your
you can backpedal later.
Journalism.
Exactly. And you call it scholarship because you got a lot of hits.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I should get tenure. Look how many people cited my article.
I also think there's like this
that is happening in the medical community, by the way.
Really?
That's exactly what's happening with doctors right now.
That's dangerous.
It's very dangerous
because we all know that law professors don't actually practice law. Right? But I think medical, professionals are supposed to be practitioners as well for the most part. Right?
Yeah. No, it's pretty sickening from the physician level. Yeah.
Wow. I do think that there is this idea, though, that if you have a platform to speak on, I think it's the same thing with the Black Square and everything like that on Instagram and all that if you have a platform, you need to be working in your support for what's happening. Even though video games, other than the fact that they're doing this because of the BLM and the riots, which I completely disagree with, because it's, I don't know, it's like going back and like changing like Bad Boys 2 to make it not about cops. You know, like going like retroactively changing something where they're just remastering a game that, came out
So it would be like
5 years. 10
I Am
years
Legend with Will Smith, but let's remove the zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be a fine movie. We just won't have any zombies whatsoever, and it will be fine. You destroy most of it because I don't know the story of the Halo characters much. Are they some type of law enforcement?
They're military units. Well, the Spartan program, which is Master Chief's of Spartan, and this one has not to do with Spartans, but I'll get into that.
Yeah.
The Spartan program was initially made as like a national guard of sorts to stop insurgents, like
alien insurgents.
No, like people, like terrorists inside of the planets that were going against the government. And then there's an alien invasion, and they reframed it as like, oh, we actually made these guys to stop that. But it's like, no, you kidnapped kids and made them do this for this.
So they actually were kind of fascists in the beginning.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, but not because they had police on there.
Yeah, and well, these are the ODSTs, which are like basically the Navy SEALs. In this world, because like the Spartans are like the Captain Americas.
Gotcha.
And the ODST, because they have augments and special armor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they're basically kidnapped as kids from their families. And it's like really like messed up how this happens. And
like Jedi.
Yeah, kind of. And a lot of the times they replaced the kids with like a clone of their kid, and then that clone would die like in 3 years. And yeah, it's pretty messed up.
And the parents didn't know; they just thought their kid died.
And then conspiracy started happening where they were like, "Okay, we know who's doing this, and like, but they can prove it." Yeah. Anyway, so they took these kids and then augmented them because they needed like young people for their augments. You know, because they chemical augments, like they'd make your brain work faster and your muscles stronger and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Got a lot like Captain America, and then like a lot of them rejected it, like their body didn't take it, so they died from that. But then a lot of them did take it, and they grew to like 8 feet and are like super strong, and then they get the special armor that like only they're allowed to have, and yeah, they become like these super soldiers. But then the ODSTs have no augments; they have special armor, but their armor doesn't have any powers. Like the Spartans, they have like overshields and stuff. So like when you get shot, you have like a shield that protects you,
like a force field shield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the ODSTs have nothing like that. They're just basically Navy SEAL type people in like special body armor, like highly trained.
Are they just like the infantry, like the grunts that take
most
of the bullets?
Those like the Marines, and then the ODSTs are like operators. They usually get deployed with Spartans, but they're not as high level as the Spartans. It's like a Spartan and a couple ODSTs a lot of the time. But yeah, they're special forces. But this game takes place in a city. Where the other ones don't, and you're like an ODST, and you get dropped into this city, and you have to like figure out what happened to all the other squadrons that like got killed. So you're like going back to like memories and stuff. It's kind of weird, but basically there's just cop cars, and like you're in a city. I mean, that's been attacked by aliens, so there's a lot of cop cars and stuff going on. So it's kind of like that's what a city looks like. So it really is just like, we probably shouldn't have that in here because it's cops are the worst nowadays, and it might offend somebody.
Would it ruin the gameplay as far as the game story?
No, it's just like why do that though?
So I agree.
But it's not like taking out like the one inherent thing. It's like if it's more like if I Am Legend, and then like while he's in New York, let's just like Photoshop all the cop cars out. But it's like, why Photoshop the cop cars out?
It's like trying to erase history in some type of sense,
exactly.
Like,
let's make Glorious Bastards with no swastikas.
Yeah. And that's key to the
but I mean they could still be like Nazis, but we don't want the imagery.
Except for the last scene.
Yeah, exactly. We'll kill Hitler. That's the good part.
No, I meant the
yeah.
No, but I could see like Blues Brothers, but the police cars are like just black sedans or something like that.
Well, they did that with E.T. Where later they went in.
Tell me, right.
Yeah, and E.T. I don't know when they did it or exactly why. I'm assuming it's because of like anti-gun movement. But they replaced all of the police officers' guns with radios.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny if you look at them side by side, and then you really pay attention. Like, why is he holding his radio?
Stop pointing your radio at me.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's been done before, but I just think it's just not authentic, and it's in the it's in the vein of rewriting history.
And I think the danger is to ask the questions like I was asking, and then have the conclusion of, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't really change the game that much.
Yeah, it's a slippery
slope.
So
why not? No. I think that you have to like take a stand on something at a certain point. Whether if this is it or not, I don't know. But there are some things we have to say no, not because it's going to change that game, but by doing so and turning a blind eye or saying, then then your whole analysis, again, the argument's been framed and you've been sucked into the frame.
Yeah.
You will end up losing.
Yeah, you're setting a precedent.
You're setting a bad precedent, because then the question will always be, but does it really change it that much? Right. Does it really change your neighborhood that much to not have the police officers? Well, I guess not that much. I don't see them that often. So maybe
the magnitude is so high in my argument, but like at the same time, like,
exactly,
it's not that bad.
The other thing is, I found out that I can basically go through any game, any television, any movie, any type of medium, and I can make an argument to remove something police related, and I can get published on this, this publication.
Yeah. Well, you can all. It's true.
I can have a lot of articles.
They've also been doing that with shows that make jokes about blackface, and not like doing blackface for pro blackface, like doing blackface and going, dude, you can't do that. That's really messed up.
They're criticizing blackface.
Exactly.
There was a show called Different Strokes a long time ago, and if you're in my generation listening to this, you'll remember it with
85. I'm just kidding.
I think it was.
No, I was making
1985. Yeah. With Gary Coleman. What you talking about, Willis? About the two brothers called Different Strokes. Anyway, Arnold, who's the younger one, played by Gary Coleman, does show up in blackface because he had seen it, and he's like, oh, like the minstrel show.
Yeah.
And he thought, oh, they were trying to be entertaining, and I can sing and I can dance, so I'll do that. And his brother is like, is in front of everybody, and everybody's shocked, and he says, Arnold, I got to tell you why this is wrong, right? So it's a good episode. It actually instructs people who don't know about the minstrel shows and blackface and what it represents. It educates them on that. But if you remove that simply because it has blackface in it, you're also missing out on an educational moment to say, well, why would, otherwise you're going to be Arnold to say, why is it wrong?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to show up with blackface on.
Yeah. And I think we should also be able to make fun of our own history. Like make fun of the bad things, because I think there is like a certain
that was stupid. We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, but I also think there's a certain amount of power you gain from being able to laugh at like what used to happen, like turn into a joke. Not like the Nazis are a joke, so like don't take them seriously, but more like, yeah, we used to be idiots and do blackface, but instead of like villainizing everybody, about that did that, be like, yeah, they're just a bunch of idiots. Like that was a stupid thing to do, and now like we're obviously not going to do that anymore. Yeah. So like making jokes about it in like 30 Rock and stuff, not like doing blackface and being like, yeah, blackface is okay, but doing blackface and being like, no, like you're an idiot for doing blackface, but that in itself is a joke. Like the whole setup, and that's why it's in the show, is to make it kind of funny. Like, oh, Jen is showing up in a blackface, and everybody's like, you can't be on the set right now because and it's just that shock value of like, oh my gosh, this is in the show, but not being racist.
I agree. Well,
I don't think that's offensive. I think that's a joke, and I mean it's like making jokes about like anything that's taboo. I don't think it's really offensive if you're doing it tastefully and you're not making it seem acceptable, but you're like making it clearly that this is not acceptable when it's obviously a joke, and that's fine.
There are plenty of shows that also cross the line to go, I can't believe they just did that.
Yeah.
Now, which I think is fine in the sense of if you are a viewer of this show and you want to watch it, you can always change the channel. Yeah. You can always put something else
that's
on.
That's South Park shtick.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. So South Park goes always against the line, over the line, way over the line. But nobody's canceling South Park, and nobody's rewriting different scenes of South Park. Yeah. But we can all agree that South Park is really offensive.
Oh, it's like the most offensive show on television for everybody.
I'm not saying it's okay to have offensive material. However, if it's offensive and your only solution to something that's offensive is to wipe it out.
Yeah.
Then you're going to lose everything. Yeah. You're going to lose everything.
That's a good point.
I also think there's a difference between creating offensive stuff now than going back and changing what's already been made.
That's a great point. So if we're at a point where we're more sensitive to it, we can all agree that having a show with blackface on it, whether it's funny or instructive or something, that's really something we shouldn't be showing right now, right? But to say, oh, we've got to go back and rewrite it. I'm super afraid, and I don't mean afraid like I'm in the corner trembling as much as I'm super concerned about these efforts to rewrite our history, even the ugly parts of the history, because there's an old adage, if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Yeah. And the only way you learn from it is to know about it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so if you don't know about it because it's rewritten, then if the adage is correct, you will repeat it. Yeah. And we're going to have something like a minstrel show in a different format because we never learned from our mistakes. Yeah. Yeah. Or, Nazism in a different form because we wiped it out from Germany's history. which Germany didn't do, if I understand
Yeah,
correctly.
I can tell you about that because I've looked into this. They did the exact opposite. They emphasized so a lot of critics in the German education system are like, we actually teach about this too much.
About 1930s and 1940s Germany.
Yeah, because we should probably be covering world history a little bit more. But they, in their schools, they like overemphasize on this is what we did in World War II. This is like the worst thing ever. This is how you don't do it. This is how you know if it's going to happen. These are like signs of it.
Right.
These are like the conditions of it and everything like that. And then they also frame it from the position that those dudes were like oppressing Germany. So like what they call the day that we won World War we won World War II.
VE Day.
Yeah.
VE Day, yeah.
They call
Victory
it
in
when
Europe.
like the Americans marched into Berlin. The way they frame it is when the Americans liberated us from
Gotcha.
Nazism. So they show it as like Germany was being oppressed by this Nazi party, and they were like the worst of the worst. And this is how you recognize Nazism and get away from it.
Right.
But they spend a lot of time on it. So the biggest critique is we need to spend time on this, but we should probably also learn about like what was going on in America and what happened in like the 1800s, because they spend a lot of time on World War I and World War II.
But if we're going to remove the word police from a video game that's not ostensibly about police, right?
Yeah.
About police brutality.
No, it's not. Not at all.
Wouldn't we do the same
aliens.
thing with? Wouldn't we do the same
Yeah.
thing with Germany?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we're moving to our world community, we got to say, hey, Markle, you've got to get your folks together and get your education stuff together and stop talking about Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We can't have Nazis. We can't have the word Nazi. We can't talk about Nazis.
True.
Which seems like it's the exact opposite of what Germany's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And as a sovereign nation, they thought that was the best for their country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about your history too, it seems like people want to like sensitize the world in a sense. If police is offensive, then we need to just get rid of it. Where in the case of Nazi Germany, as far as it being something that was extremely evil, and everyone can agree that it was evil, to erase the history of what happened would be to sensitize the world, because there's a lot of bad.
Like censor. I don't know if censor.
Am I saying that right? Like sense it. Like as the world is more ugly than people think.
Sanitize. Is that what you mean?
Sensitize.
Sensitize.
Yeah. I think it's
Well,
right.
sensitize is the word. Sensitize means that I'm trying to get your senses tuned into something. I don't know if you're using it. So if I'm trying to sensitize you to the pain
Gotcha.
of somebody who has a back problem, right? I might say, well, wear this, or
Gotcha.
I want to sensitize you to the plight of a pregnant woman. I'm going to put this big, 50-pound bodysuit on
Yeah.
you, and so you'll be sensitized.
Gotcha.
I'll be now sensitive to her position. And
But
that's
Jack, you're saying more like you want to blur,
unsensitize
like kind of folk.
then
desensitized.
desensitize.
Yeah.
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 Where you
Numb
don't
it, numb
you
it,
want to
numb it,
yeah,
numb it, yeah.
you want to take it away.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at it.
Right. Yeah.
Where I think
It's
it's
the opposite,
where I think it's important, especially in our history, to look at what really happened in a lot of places, and to acknowledge how the world was. I was thinking about this recently, that the world's been a pretty ugly place. So we had the police brutality. I think our form of the Nazi party would be slavery, as far as our history, as
like the shameful American
ugly,
thing.
shameful.
Ugly, exactly.
We should be talking about that more.
I'm not. Well, maybe. Yeah, I mean, we all know about it, and we all were taught about the Civil War, and we all know
But
that
it's
it
like
was
the big
bad.
shame of America.
It's
is
the
what
big
you're trying
shame
to
of
say.
America. Yeah.
I agree.
But what people don't understand historically is that America was one of the first countries in the world to abolish slavery. So I think it's really important that people understand that the entire world's culture at that time involved slavery.
Yeah.
Which is important to understand, because that's as common, as maybe abortion today. Where it's just like it's completely.
I'd say
there,
probably more common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it was just a normal thing to do. And we grew over time to realize this is something that is very negative and
Yeah.
very bad. and that's how we grew out of it.
I completely agree.
Well,
So-
certain parts of the country did, because it was much more part of the South's economy
Yeah.
to have slavery. In other words, you're going to take my money away if you take my slaves away. Where
Yeah.
the North, which was now industrialized,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and had machines to be their slaves, didn't need people to do the agricultural work of slaves.
Yeah,
Because and so we have a couple shameful. We have taken the Cherokee out of North Carolina.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
Trail of Tears.
I was going to say
We have a lot of shameful things about our history after we became the United States in
even the railroad with
1789.
the Asians when we were building the
Especially the
cross-continental
Chinese,
railroad.
yeah.
Yeah, the Chinese. Yeah. I do want to get on a soapbox for like 3 seconds because this is one of my biggest gripes and biggest pet peeves like ever. Is that the Civil War was definitely in part about slaves, but I think everybody nowadays likes to frame the Civil War is that the reason the South, or the Confederacy, was fighting the Union was because the Union wanted to abolish slavery, and the Confederacy was like, no, we want to keep our slaves. That was part of it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it was also, because back then you have to understand that the Confederacy, or America itself, we were a confederacy. So each state was basically its own country. And the United States was more like the UN than it is now today, where we were like this. It was just body that held all of the separate individual sovereign states together.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the Civil War, it became like one unified country. That's why it's the Union versus the Confederacy.
Well, British is also called these United States.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
switch over to the United
Exactly,
States.
yes.
Correct.
But a lot of this, what the Civil War was about, was that the Union was trying to say we need to all unify to become one state, and then the central government will have more power than the state governments. And the Confederacy was trying to say, no, we want state power. And part of that is if our state wants slaves, then we decide. You guys don't get to decide. And I'm 100% anti-slavery, but my point is that I think everybody nowadays tries to frame it as everybody that was in the South that has a Confederate flag, that supports Confederacy, the idea of the Confederacy, are a bunch of racists that want slaves. And and a lot of that culture that still is in the South is that we're like Louisiana, we're Texas. They weren't in this, but
Texas was.
They were in the Civil
Yeah, they
War?
were in the
Okay.
Confederacy. Yeah,
I don't know if they were a state.
one of the.
they were.
They were in
Okay.
1845.
I don't know my Texas history that well.
1845.
Okay. But it's about our state, our country. Like I'm a Louisianian, or however you say that. I'm not an American.
Louisianan, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
South
an American.
Carolinian.
I'm just in the Americas, but I'm first and foremost.
My country's Virginia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was really about states' rights and not about slavery. And I just wanted to clarify that because I see it all over social media and all over the news that the Confederacy were a bunch of racists, and that everybody that has a Confederate flag is pro-slavery, hates black people, and are racist. And that's just not the case.
I also think that part of it's the school's fault, because even when I took world history, which we covered briefly, America, and then 8th grade is U.S. history, the first number one topic is the issue is slavery, and then it goes down. Well, then it was also states' rights, and it was also this, and that.
I argue that it's more states' rights, and then slavery was under the under the category of states' rights, because the states wanted to say that, all right, well, might be anti-slavery, our state, but it's up to the state. It's not up to the federal government to decide what we get to do in our state, because we're a sovereign state.
Well, and I would say also that that was the Union's narrative. The Union's narrative is there are these racists down in the South are trying to do something that is inhumane. And I don't think anybody around this table would disagree that it's inhumane and it should have been gotten rid of.
Yeah.
So the North's narrative was this war is about slavery. Without being on one side or the other of the Iraqi war under George W. Bush, it was like the narrative that George W. Bush used, that when we went into Iraq to liberate the Iraqis from the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein.
Was that the narrative? I thought it was to go get.
That was the first narrative,
Okay.
was weapons of mass destruction. But then, now it's switched.
After we couldn't find any.
We couldn't find any. And it's switched to say, no, we're liberating these people from an oppressive regime. And so...
And we want your golden poppy fields, but that's a whole separate thing.
You can keep some of the oil.
Yeah.
The narrative, and so a narrative that says these are a people that are oppressed by folks who are evil means, well, sign me up. I got to go stop the evil folks.
Right.
I got to save the slaves.
Right.
Which, again, that was the prime issue that manifested itself as the states' right issue. You know, it could have been also that the states' right issue was, it could have been a tax issue, or it could have been the death penalty.
Yeah.
It could have been the death penalty, and that's still an issue, right? And we still say that's a states' rights issue.
Yeah.
And the federal government, for the first time, said, no, this issue is so important that we're going to make sure that all of our states abide by this humane decision, because it's too important. It's because it's not just about death penalty or not death penalty. I guess they didn't think it was that big of a deal. We need to impose this on all of our states.
Yeah.
And the southern states said, that's not what we agreed to.
Yeah.
That's not what we agreed to in the Bill of Rights. In fact, that's why we had the Bill of Rights, because we were afraid you were going to do this. Because remember, the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments. That means there's a constitution, and someone said, wait a second.
Yeah.
I got a couple things that I want to add to this. And if you notice, the Bill of Rights are all about what the government can't do. The Constitution is about what the government can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're enumerated powers, which means the federal government has no power except what it says it has. And the Bill of Rights says, and by the way, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a checks and balance.
It was the Federalists won the argument, but the Anti-Federalists said, I want these checks on it.
Right.
And now the federal government wanted to come in and say, I want to impose this on you. And the Anti-Federalists, even though they were probably all dead who actually signed the document, that idea was still alive, especially in the South, to say, no. Again, it would be like the UN trying to dictate American policy. We would say no to that. We might even fight for that. Right?
Yeah.
It's just that the South was wrong on the moral issue of slavery.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's not why the South seceded.
Yes.
Right.
They seceded because, okay, if you tell us what to do with slavery, what are you going to tell us to do next?
Right. Yeah.
And that's not what we're doing. We're not going to give ourselves over to that.
And most Confederates didn't have slaves, because only the people that owned plantations
be
could
rich.
have them.
It's really, really rich to afford.
And most of the people fighting were a bunch of farm boys and stuff like that. They're just like, well, I have a rifle and I'm going to fight for my state. Just like if China came in to Texas today, we'd all be picking up our guns and, fighting against the invaders. It's the same concept. I mean, I might not, be in big oil, but if they're coming for our oil or whatever it is, it's like, well, I got to defend my house. I got to defend my family. I got to, defend my state.
It would be like Canada, the United States, and Mexico saying, "Hey guys, let's form a confederation, confederation, to federate with each other and fight against this invader." Yeah, let's do it. So we're all going to wear the same uniforms, even though historically they wore whatever they could. I do have a question for you, though, Will,
go ahead.
because I want to push back a little bit on everybody who is in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and they're flying the stars in the bars. That they are all for states' rights and they're not for slavery. No,
I don't. And
you did say that you think that everybody that has a Confederate flag is for pro-slavery or they're racist. I wonder, though, if that's become what the flag represents, even for the people that fly it.
I think it has for some people.
Okay.
And that's why I said, I'm pretty sure I said this, is that I don't think that everybody that has the Confederate flag is a racist. Because I do think that I do think that there are people that do use a Confederate flag as a sign of racism and oppression. But I also think that there is certain states and certain communities that the Confederate flag is like a real big part of their history, like the Alamo is in Texas history. That it's like, well, yeah, we're a Confederate state, like through and through. And I don't think I think it's a piece of Americana that represents the South, and I think over time it has become more and more adopted and co-opted by certain racist groups to represent racism, but I don't think it inherently, and everybody that has it, supports racism and racist ideals.
I know what you mean as far as the flag represents the South, it's Southern pride. The only thing is that since slavery was a huge issue, especially, and it was something that was fought for in the Civil War, it's kind of tied to that flag. So it's kind of like how, like,
I agree, but I think that's my whole point, is that it's being written and talked about as the Confederate flag equals a bunch of racist slave owners, and that's what the whole Civil War is about, which I think is how we're framing it nowadays.
So it's an incorrect historical narrative, but would you go so far as to say that most people that are displaying the Confederate flag nowadays, meaning more than 50%, are doing it because of their view on certain races?
I would say no. Like,
No?
honestly, because I knew people in high school back in Virginia that had Confederate flag hats and just had a Confederate flag on their truck or whatever, and they were not even a little bit racist. They were just like redneck country boys that would skip school to go hunting and fishing, and were just normal dudes that, were just like, no, yeah, it just represents the South. Like, and this is
Southern,
where I'm from.
like Jack said, Southern pride. I think that's right. I mean,
but I have seen videos of people that are like yelling at black people on the internet, being like, "Look at my Confederate flag," and have been really racist. So I completely agree with that too. But I also have known people. I mean, even what's that one show with the orange cart, the Confederate flag on the top?
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, I don't think that they were a bunch of racists.
No, that was Southern pride.
Yeah, exactly.
That's supposed to represent Southern pride.
That's my point. Is that it's
and
also
Southern pride without saying part of my pride of being a Southerner is being a racist.
Yes, but more just I'm from the South, and this is kind of our flag.
Yeah.
As South people, but I do think again it's been co-opted and it's been staged nowadays. And honestly, ever since the Civil War, but I think it's getting worse and worse. And even the whole idea that we can't have military bases named after Confederate generals, as like, well, we can't have them because they were a bunch of racists. And any sign of the Confederacy means that they were racists. And I just don't. I think that's completely inaccurate.
That is historically inaccurate.
That's really my point, even more than the Confederate flag, is that the way we paint the Civil War in general, because the way I see it is that what I've been seeing is I've been seeing posts and people saying that, like, the riots in around America right now are just as justified as the Civil War, and the fact that back and what I mean is back during the Civil War, it was a bunch of white people fighting a bunch of white people that wanted to keep slaves, and there were a bunch of racists, and that's why we had a Civil War. And I've seen people use that same argument nowadays to say a bunch of people need to go kill a bunch of other people and riot against people to stop, police brutality or racism, and they're equivocating the two, and saying that they're equal when the Civil War really wasn't about racism, not at all. It was about states' rights, and there were slavery aspects to it for sure, but the whole reason that the way that they're painting it is that the whole reason the Civil War happened is because there was a bunch of racists in the South that we need to go get rid of because they're ruining America.
Yeah, that was an inhumane act.
That's what they're painting it.
No, but that was the
way the Union was.
That was the
Union's
narrative.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is that
so it is actually, you're absolutely right in that the folks that are saying, "Hey, we need to go get rid of these alt-right fascists," that's exactly what the Union did for the most part in order to get the ire of the North up to say, yes, this is a just war. So in many ways, they're not historically correct. However, they're using the exact same tactics.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, my real point.
I get your point.
Is that that's just not what that was about, and that's not what the Confederacy stood for.
That was more than a 3-minute soapbox.
So yeah, I'm sorry. I just went into a whole thing.
I think it's important. I think it's important to understand that
understanding history is extremely important. Actually,
and also the reason that it's more than 3 minutes is this has subtle complexities to it.
It does, yeah.
And one of the other subtle complexities is not just looking at it historically, but looking at what it means now. I'm trying to think of something. I'm looking at Will, but it could be Mike or Jack or Sophie. What flag or emblem would be something that would represent you and your belief?
Me personally,
yeah. Let's just say,
I guess it'd be like,
let's say it's a crucifix.
I was gonna say, I guess it's like saying that the crucifix represents like child raping.
Yeah,
like the papacy.
So what? Let's take this. Okay, I'm gonna try to flip it around a little bit. Let's just say that there was a group that suppressed and oppressed you.
Yeah.
And they had a symbol of like a swastika.
Okay.
Okay. And that swastika didn't necessarily mean Nazism. Maybe I should use a different one. Let's just say it's an oak leaf. Okay, it's an oak leaf. They got a flag with an oak leaf on it. And that oak leaf really just meant that they were pro Swedish descent.
Okay,
I'm making stuff up, okay? But what happened was you became really, really oppressed because you were not of Swedish descent. They weren't necessarily trying to oppress you as much as it ended up oppressing you.
Yeah.
And then it was all blew over, right? But you have a lot of scars. And the fact that you can't get a good job now and stuff, you're saying, that's because I'm still like 100 years behind everything because those damn Swedes that came in with that oak leaf. Every time you saw an oak leaf flag, would you be a little like, you know, that oak leaf flag means something very negative to me. It reminds me that my grandfather, you know, was shot in the head by somebody, and it was okay to be shot in the head because he was Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to,
Yeah.
I'm making a bad one, but
No,
I get to my
what you're
point,
saying.
you know?
I guess so, but my argument to that would be, I mean, at the end of the day, this is America. And I mean, we're allowed to, legally, we're allowed to walk around with Nazi flags if we want to.
We are, and so I'm kind of flipping it to say not American, but would it be, and I don't think this is being handled correctly at all.
Yeah.
But I could see an argument of charity saying, you know,
Yes, I completely agree with you.
You know, this is my flag and stuff like that, but I understand that there was some really bad crap that went down under the Confederate flag for you and your people. And because of that, I get it, man. You know, we should probably have the Confederate. I'm still proud to be Southern. I actually believe in the cause of states' rights, but I get it.
Yeah.
Because that war's been over for a long time now.
Yes, but I don't think that we should outlaw it, though.
I agree.
I think that it could be. We could definitely go community to community and say, "Hey, man, you're right. Let's just. I just won't fly it because you know I love you as a person, and I see that this offends you. So I'm just going to take it down because you know you're important to me, and I care how you feel. I get that. I completely agree with that, and I understand that. But I also don't think that we should start renaming everything and tearing down statues that don't even have the Confederate flag, but say, hey, this general, whatever." You know, he happened to be a Confederate general, but he was still a great general, and he didn't necessarily stand for slavery. He was just on the wrong side or whatever, in some people's eyes. And I don't think that we need to be tearing down Americana because somebody's having their feelings hurt.
So maybe this is it. Maybe the approach is wrong. Where the approach of charity, I might convince some people of that. I might not, right? But I might convince some people of that. I could either choose a charitable one to say, listen, guys, we all love Robert E. Lee. He was a great general. Yeah. You know, great strategist. But he's a trigger for a lot of people. I hate to use the word trigger because that's even become, you know, co-opted. But, you know, but that's something that, you know, that reminds people of a very, very dark time. It doesn't necessarily remind you of a very dark time, and I get that, but there are a lot of people in this country that it does. You know, maybe we should put him in the basement for a little while, you know, until a time that it's not remembered as that. I think a lot of people would say, all right, I don't know that I agree with putting him in the basement, but I see your point. Let's try to get to some middle ground.
Yeah.
But what's being done instead is they're saying, let me throw out a voice of anger.
Yeah.
Let me throw out a voice of resentment. And these people, you people did this to me, and you people did this to me. And that statue represents you and your damn heritage. And now that's got to go. We got to tear that down. If you don't take it down, we're taking it down. Okay, then what are you going to do? It's like, come and take it. Yeah. Okay? Because now you're insulting me as opposed to trying to
have a real conversation.
Having a real conversation and also
compassion, really.
Say, you know, I'm trying to be honest with you as a person. And that seems like that to me seems like it's way out of that's the part that's so far out of control that anybody that says, well, we really need to have a dialogue on this. How are we going to possibly have a dialogue when we're just yelling at each other?
Yeah. Well,
there's no dialogue there.
Yeah. Well, this is what I think the problem is. I actually thought about this the other day. I was like, you know, racism, I don't believe actually was an issue, but I think it's an issue now in 2020. It's now an issue again. And I was like,
you think so? Like America has become a 100%. Racist country?
No, that race.
No, for some people, the issue of racism is a big concern for them still.
Yeah,
I mean, I think.
Well, this is what I mean.
I think it's an illusionary concern, to be completely honest. I guess it's a hot topic.
Well, it's illusionary in the sense that there's no systemic racism on how they're talking about it.
I'm willing to concede that point to hear Jack's argument.
Okay,
because
sorry.
I think that's.
No, I want to hear your argument. I was just more saying, is what you're saying though that like in 2020 racism is a real problem we need to worry about? Like there are a bunch of racists out there that we need to take care of.
No. So hear me out. So what racism is? I kind of want to look up the definition, but it's the belief in a race. And I thought about this pretty thoroughly. I was like, so racism, I don't believe was an issue as far as a Caucasian ethnicity, but it became an issue brought up by the African American ethnicity, that race is now an issue again, and that's what this whole movement's about.
Most of the isms like sexism, ageism, racism, I'm not taking environmentalism into this, but those types of things mean that a person is being deprived of some equality based on that trait, race, sex, age. So I think that's a better definition of racism, that people believe that they're being deprived of some equality based on their race. And I do think people believe that. There are a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, there are people that believe that nowadays.
I think people that believe that,
and so therefore it's an issue. If people believe it's real, then I think it is an issue for some people. The issue of perceived racism is an issue. Maybe we should say that.
So what I was thinking is, so it's now a problem again. It's something we now have to fix, because if we were to just put it under the rug and say that it's not a problem anymore, we're actually discrediting half our population, because half our population thinks it is a problem right now, and that's what's going on in these boycotts and these riots and everything that's going on with these movements. So I was like, so to identify that as a problem, I think is the first step. The second step is like, okay, so how do we solve this problem? Because a lot of people are like, we're just so angry that they're just acting in outrage, and the other is trying to say, no, it's not a problem at all. This is what I thought, so if we were to talk about how to solve the world's biggest problems, I was thinking, so how do we solve racism? Like, if I was president, what would I do? And I was like, what I would do, and this is what I think the problem is that we have a very divided culture, in a sense where your ethnicity does divide you, which is true. I mean, like, we're Caucasian. There's African Americans, there's Hispanic Americans, there's Latin Americans, Asian Americans. Each one is actually divided. What I think the solution should be is that we should actually try to completely abolish racism, in the sense of we take that prefix of Asian American, African American, we just completely throw it away. And what does that make us? That makes us all American. And
but you still have to describe people.
See, I don't think so.
You do, because you're like, all right, well, someone just got shot. What do you look like?
An American.
Yeah, but what do you look like?
Yeah, use anything except race.
You have to go, well, I mean, was he white or was he black?
I don't think you do.
I think you really do.
I mean, you can say he was 6 feet tall, he was muscular, he was strong.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like, you can narrow it down so much by saying, well, he was definitely an Asian. He was definitely a Caucasian.
Tell me if he has brown eyes or blue eyes. I can't. I know, but I've got like 50 people here, and I can get down to 25
that's
if you tell me the blue eyes. Nope, can't do it.
Now, on a job application, sure, I agree with you, but I do think we still need distinguishing words, like in a medical file. I think that can still be important. Because
I disagree.
I mean, there are certain diseases that can only pertain to certain race. That not a lot of them,
well,
but
like sickle cell anemia is a very obvious one.
But you can detect that without having to know the race.
Sure, but in your file, if a doctor's just looking at a file and he needs to be aware of certain things, I mean, I think there are important distinctions to be made, just like if you're a male or a female.
I disagree. I disagree. Yeah. I don't think your race is a biological thing, because we're actually all human beings.
Well, I agree with that, but we also are different races. It's
a social construct. Well, we've decided there are 3 races.
Yeah.
There are 3 races. There's Caucasian, Mongoloid, and Negroid. These are the 3 scientific races that, again, scientific in the sense that these have been the categories for hundreds and hundreds of years as far as a race. Now, there are ethnicities on top of that.
Yeah, Hispanic.
But this is why Egyptians are Caucasians. They're neither Negroid or Mongoloid. Mongoloid being the mostly Asian, or I guess I can't say that word either, right? But mostly Asian, people of Asian descent. Yeah. Negroid being people of African descent, and then Caucasian being people of European and
Scandinavian,
and Asian Minor. European and Asia Minor, or Eastern European and Asia Minor.
Now, tell me if I'm incorrect, but to me that just sounds like locations. As far as
yes, it is.
It's just where you're from. And your ancestors might be from Asia, but you're currently living in America. So
that's your nationality.
But it's also your location. And if the race is
race has to be with not your current location. It's your it's a location of origin that has that is significant enough to have affected your the way you look, some type of visual appearance. I mean, there is always the solution too of there's another solution too. Two people of the same race cannot get married. Within 3 generations, you have everything knocked out.
Yeah, everybody's white. I mean, everybody's
the same.
Mixed, yeah,
everybody's mixed race.
Yeah.
See, I don't think
it's not a good solution as far as happiness goes. But I mean,
I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I think it would solve a lot of problems if we took out racism.
But I think the tribalism part's still an issue in our deep human psychology, or our lizard brains of going, you look different than I am, and something about that doesn't make
it away though.
No, because visually it's still there. It doesn't matter how you're talking. Your brain, your primal brain's still going to process as you're different than me, and that bothers me.
See, that's for me. I can tell anecdotally that's just not true
but I know, but you're not everybody, and also. Like it's like the whole bias thing. Just because you have a bias about something, you can try to remove that bias as much as you want, but there's still always going to be a root bias there that's always going to affect you. And that's why I don't think racism can truly ever be solved, because the real problem is tribalism, and I think that's just inherent in the human mind.
Well, I disagree.
Let me say that I have at least a story. It's an anecdote just to say why you're both right and you're both wrong in certain ways. Mom and I made a concerted effort, a very concerted effort, to make sure that we never talked about anybody with regard to their race when you were growing up. I mean, when you were in your formative years, like before 6, and stuff like that. We never described anybody by their race or anything like that, which is much what you're talking about, Jack, right? Right. And I remember you were on a baseball team when you were 6 years old, and you were describing a friend of yours. And I was like, I don't know who that is. You're like, he's the guy, he's kind of got a brown face, and it's like, okay, I know who you're talking about, right? So you were using it not as he has a brown face and there's something wrong with you. He wasn't saying that. He was saying, but the brown face was something that he recognized that the psychology of somebody said he has a distinguishing characteristic that has to do with his skin color. Let me put it that way. Okay. But it was your friend. It wasn't, no, this is my enemy because he has a distinct, that he was different. It wasn't necessarily a tribalism, but I found it interesting because it was still used as a descriptor to say, who are you talking about? You didn't say the kid with
the big ears
or brown eyes or something like that. And this isn't you. This is a lot of people. Kateri is the same way, who's now 8, but when she was younger too, that's what she was trying to find a way to describing the person, and she couldn't figure out a way. And she said, well, she's kind of got like really tan arms and face, it's like really dark tan, but it was not a point of division. It was a point of description, much like if we were to say, well, that person was really, the really tall girl in my class, or, the kind of short guy in my
big
class.
Nose boy.
And it wasn't even stuff like that. I mean, I've never heard any of you say, the guy with the really big nose.
Gotcha. I was just poking at myself.
Yeah. No, I mean, you really, it really has been something like that was more similar to height and hair color. That was that. So I do think that from what I've seen, and it's very anecdotal, I get it. Right. And I don't know that, how, I know enough about unconscious bias to say I don't know how well we succeeded in trying to remove our other bias and never talk about anybody in a way that has to do with race. However, my big question is, how are we going to enforce that? So you're president of the United States, and you've got somebody like me that says, okay, you know what? I think the president has a good point. I'm not going to talk about race when it has to do with my kid. And then you got, you got somebody who the Confederate flag means something that's very racist and goes, screw that. I'm going to talk about, the N-word, and tell all my kids that those N-word guys are bad and evil and they need to stay away. And don't you even think about marrying one.
Yeah.
Why? 'Cause that's the way I was raised. Because I truly believe that.
Right.
So how do you enforce that as a policy?
So what I would do personally is that I would first make sure that all the job applications, school applications, and medical, because they ask you your race. I think that's completely irrelevant when you're applying for a job, because your race just does not have any implications on your ability to do that job or to go to school.
Pretty much already the law. That really is the law already. So that already happens. Anything that there is sometimes a separate thing that you can choose to fill out if you want to, that's separate from the job application, just so they can know whether they have a certain demographic of applicants.
Yeah.
So after the fact, they can say, well, we had 60 black applicants.
So yeah, I
we
would
had 120
I would get rid of
applicants.
all of that.
Okay, so you could, but it's not. It's illegal to use that as a way of a criteria for hiring.
Mm-hmm.
It's already illegal,
Right.
and it's gotten to the point where people just don't have it on the regular application. And by the way, you can
Same
always
thing like handicapped.
you
Right?
can always choose to not disclose that if you wanted to.
So I would still have the question, because you would still be asked, what race are you? And I don't see it being necessary to identify anyone as, from their race.
So you take it all off the job applications.
Yeah, so it's gone. So basically, you never get asked what race are you, but you are asked, are you a U.S. citizen or not? Because that's what you talk about, tribism. I'm trying to make a tribe here. The goal is to make America. There's no difference between me and LeBron James, because we're both American and we're from the same tribe.
But
where
most people, anything that has to do with racism, the way somebody regards the opposite sex, as far as inferior or superior, things like that, those are usually solidified and almost concretized within somebody's mind by the time they're 7. They're finding out.
Okay.
So you've got to somehow reach into the very, very start, which means you have to reach into the family.
Yeah, well, so this
The school isn't enough.
It's not. So the step, that I think that would be a step, because that's the first step in as far as if you're applying for an application or to get your kids into school, that you're already subjecting them that you have to pick what race you are. My second thing is which I think you're absolutely right. There's no legal enforcement of this. It has to be a cultural, societal change, which is the problem right now. I mean, this is why our country's on fire right now, is because there's division between these different cultures. It's the African American culture that believes that our culture as whites, we owe them reparations for what we did to them as people. Instead of it being this viewpoint as we're all the same people, we're not divided in a sense. Is your people, where it's our people, is what happened to you happened to us, and that's what happened in our history. It happened. It didn't just happen to you. It happened to all of us. Instead, and this is what. And if we came at it from this approach, I believe it would solve a lot of issues on this division. And I think this is how we find middle ground. This is why I think if someone wants to take down a Robert Lee statue, we come together as a people and we decide together that half of our people are offended.
How do you come together with 3.5 million
Yeah, I was gonna
people?
say that.
That's a big town hall.
No, well, I mean, I'm not talking about changing
Twitter polls.
I'm not talking about. No, I'm not.
I was making a joke.
I'm not talking about changing our system. I mean, this is our system. Is we have representatives that speak for us. So what happens is when we talk for people, it's in our government. It's in our 3 branches of government. But we also have this thing going now where there's a huge, with the internet, there's a huge element of cultural influence that is way beyond, that kind of almost writes our culture, which has nothing to do with our government. And that just comes from influencers. Because, for example, music, sports, and film all have more influence on our culture than our 3 branches of government. As far as
I'll concede that.
As far as what is our youth listening to, what are we listening to?
It forms your opinions. It forms your world outlook.
Yeah, and it can also.
They all do.
And it's also interest too. For example, I can like hip hop, and I can have a friend who likes hip hop, but hip hop is culturally seen as black culture, but at the same, if you go to, let's say, a Kendrick Lamar concert, 70% of the people are Caucasian, where I think that whole word frame is just completely unnecessary. There should be no reason that we even look at half of a concert to be Caucasian, black, or
So let's all agree with that. I'm still stuck on, if you were president, you would just remove the concept of racial differences, and I'm losing you a little bit on
Okay, so again, it's what I would do first. You have to do it where the job you can't.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
that. Yeah. So again, that's pretty
not
much
presented.
it's pretty much that way already.
I still see it on all, like any application I apply for or anything.
Yeah,
like
it's in
that,
an
and
optimal section. It's in an optional section, but
I'll get rid of that. That optional section, I'll get rid of that. The second thing is,
But what if there's a commercial for, I don't know, something that's like, I don't know if I can say anything without it sounding like I'm like being racist.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, I know.
Okay,
no,
so
but not really.
there-
Let's say it's like something that's like, okay, hair oil, because we have different hair, black people and white people. Shampoo made for black people. There's a commercial about it. And so on that application, you need to know if you're going to be black or white, because it's specific for this one thing. I mean, I think you can completely eradicate it for like an acting job. We need
someone who's going to represent the community that I'm trying to sell this to.
Exactly. You're still going to end up with people. You're always going to end up with these groups. And I also think people want to identify in these groups. I don't think if you took Hispanics and said, we're just going to pretend or we're just going to get rid of Hispanic culture, Hispanics are going to go, no, that's who I am to a big extent. So I don't want to erase my identity as a Hispanic American, because, I mean, that's me. Like, I am an Hispanic American.
In some ways, the idea of getting rid of the race and ethnicity is it seems to me like a very white solution, in the sense that whites are fine getting rid of the designation as being white, because it doesn't mean anything to us culturally. I mean, there is no white culture. There's no food.
There's like Irish culture.
You've got like Tex-Mex restaurants. You've got but you don't see like white people food.
But this is true. This is kind of my point, is that just let's look at us. I mean, we're what, English, Italian, German.
Yeah.
Our ethnicities aren't white. Like we're not a white race. We have ancestry that comes from different locations.
But all of those are Caucasian. Racial.
But Hispanic people,
unless you're using race differently.
But also,
I'm talking about our culture. As far as we have our Italian culture has a huge impact on our family. We have a lot of Italian.
Sure.
Culture.
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying?
So would you want that erased and to say no more Italian anything? No more Italian food, no more Italian
that is what
songs.
You're doing. Because Hispanic might be like light brown people, but we don't call Hispanics light brown people. We call Hispanics.
No, I'm not talking about erasing different countries' cultures. You can still have a Mexican culture. You can still have an Italian culture. You can have an African culture. I'm talking about as far as you're identifying yourself as a Mexican in America, you should be classifying yourself as an American who enjoys Mexican culture. It's completely
but hip hop is not African culture.
It's considered black culture.
Exactly. What does that mean?
It's cultural. It's societal. We as people have this understanding that hip hop is related to the.
But if I'm black in America and you're saying no, you can't call yourself that anymore. Mm-hmm. You're like, no, I want to call myself a black American because I am a black American.
If we want to solve racism, if we want to abolish it,
I just don't know if that would solve it though. I'm
digging away at it because I wonder if it's too utopian in principle, because I'm not sure what the legs on that would look like.
I also think that regardless if you got rid of all labels, some people, let's use blonde girls as an example for men. You might have a bad experience with a blonde girl when you're 13. You dated her in high school. She was real mean to you. She cheated on you with your best friend. And now in your brain, or maybe even consciously, you're going, I don't like blonde girls anymore. I'm not talking to blonde girls. And then your son comes home 20 years later with a blonde girl, and just part of your brain, it's not even, at this point, it might not even be conscious. You just go, I just don't like her because like something about you goes, blonde people hurt me when I was younger.
That's wrong.
Well, I agree, it's wrong.
Absolutely.
I think everybody agrees it's wrong though.
Exactly.
But it's human.
But that's what I mean. It's in your brain. It's just
I guess
you can't get rid of it.
I'm talking about pushing it away, because we talk about like as far as there's a lot of stuff that is of the flesh that isn't right, that isn't objectively so to make the conscious decision that okay, she's blonde, I'm having this feeling because yes, she was 13, but you're aware that she's not different than any other girl on this planet.
But that's trying to consciously get rid of your biases, and that's just proven to not work. It just can't happen.
You can't consciously remove your unconscious biases.
It's impossible. Even if you recognize that you're being biased.
But I'm not talking about trying to erase your biology, but so would you approve that if he treated her just because she was blonde poorly, that was correct?
No, it's totally wrong. But it still happens.
There's a normative argument to say what one
But we can
should
mitigate
do.
that.
No, you can't.
I think
you can't.
I think if we
but
culturally...
it's been scientifically proven that even if you try your hardest to get rid of your bias that's inherent in your body, you cannot do it.
There are some things you can...
Unless it's like
I'm saying it's inevitable that...
Well, you can mitigate it,
you
but
can mitigate
can't
the
erase
effects, but you can't erase the bias.
Yeah.
You can mitigate the effects. So in other words, I can say, I know that I might have some biases based on who I dated in high school.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just going to admit it. I don't even know what they are. I might be able to tick some off, but I bet you have a whole bunch that I don't even know I'm aware of. How is that going to affect me going forward? In other words, when that, regardless of her race, woman, because you didn't talk about getting rid of male, female, right? Let's just say a woman comes in, or I find out she's a woman in the interview, right? And she just looks like that girl I dated when I was a sophomore. I'm not even really thinking about that.
Yeah.
There's something about it goes, something off about her. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I could be wrong.
Now there are.
I don't know if I'm right,
there
but
are some.
I do.
There are some things I can do to mitigate that affecting her from getting the job. There's things that the corporation can do. There's things that we can do culturally within our companies. I teach on this. Okay? So I do know that there are proven ways.
Bias, check it out.
Right. So there are things we can do, but what we can't do is to expect ourselves to say, I will just not be biased. In fact, that is the worst thing to do from our human, the neuroscience that we know about the way our brains work. In fact, when we say, I'm just not going to be biased, it actually allows all of those unconscious and implicit biases to come out even stronger because you're not even worried about those anymore. You're just like, I'm not going to be biased. 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 It's almost too generalized. And if I wanted to put this in this kind of the Christian worldview too, and I would say it's probably true of the Jewish tradition too, that we are imperfect creatures, and the imperfection in us as creatures, not the way we were created, but because of we are imperfect, means that any plan to say, let's just count on everybody making the best call, on making that optimal call, on making the right call, right? Is inevitably going to fail.
Yeah, I guess that's not what I'm saying as far as counting on the person to make the right call. But I do think there's a cultural understanding as far as how our culture perceives one another, where, and this is kind of what I mean by racism is now a problem in 2020, but it wasn't last year, is because culturally it's now a problem, and that's how we're perceiving each other. In where it's completely cultural. The only reason that racism is even discussed right now is because half the population sees it as a problem. So they're making the conscious effort to identify each other as race. And this is what the whole BLM movement is that it's directed just towards black people.
So the BLM movement is completely... the BLM movement is disingenuous. The BLM movement is not about erasing racism. The BLM movement is about using racism to reach their other means, which have absolutely nothing to do with protecting anybody of any race.
I'm not talking about the corporation BLM. Yeah. I'm actually talking, which you're absolutely correct. I'm talking about the actual movement as far as all just the American people that are involved.
Can one really separate the two? Because isn't the cultural part that you're talking about informed, or at least the issue was framed originally by the corporation, to where the only reason, because I get your point, the reason we're talking so much about racism is because we're having so many discussions about race.
It's a huge,
and so if we talk, back when we weren't talking about race, there seemed to be less racism. Now I can see a counter argument to that to say, well, there was always just enough racism. We just weren't talking about it. And you weren't aware of it, Jack, because you were not talking about it.
Right.
And it wasn't affecting you because it didn't,
I guess this is just my belief, is that we find ourselves in a problem where half our country has huge issue with race, where when we weren't talking about it, I'm not saying there wasn't racism, but it wasn't an issue.
Cars weren't burning. I think that's about it. I think the same issues were there.
Yeah, I mean, there was
either there were no issues and they're making them up, or there were real issues and they just weren't being talked about. Either way, I think the issues were the issues. The outward signs and actions are now becoming very, very drastic actions.
So Martin Luther King, why the civil rights movement was successful is because Martin Luther King said I'm gonna butcher the quote, but we don't look at each other based on our skin color, but on the contents of our character.
Yeah.
And this is why, and what Martin Luther King and people like Booker T. Washington did is he didn't hold a different race accountable for what happened historically. What his position was is that the American society is not living up to its constitutional foundation, and that we in Martin Luther King's position is that there's a subject of people that are not being treated fairly under the Constitution that we are written. So it's basically saying that he wasn't protesting America, he was protesting Americans, saying...
No, he was protesting America because he was protesting the fact that black people couldn't vote. He 100% was, though, because it was illegal for black people to go out and vote. There was black bathrooms and white bathrooms, and now it is a person-to-person problem. But back then it was saying, hey, government, you need to make black people... But human beings.
The difference is that he was talking to the people of the government and saying that the system is wrong in itself.
Yeah, but the system's not wrong anymore, though.
Well, no. Well, this is why people are burning American flags, and the revolution is.
But that's because they misperceive and misunderstand the data, and they think that black people are getting slaughtered in the streets every day by white cops, when that's just not happening.
Which I agree. I'm saying correct. I guess I'm trying to find a solution on how we get out of this situation.
I also just don't think there is a logical solution.
I don't think so either.
I think also a lot of our problems aren't logical and why things are happening. It's not a step by step. Well, because of this,
I agree with you. I think that right now
mayhem. Yeah, and I don't think there's a lot of solutions to mayhem.
I completely agree. I think it's an emotional problem right now in America where. One, I think a lot of people are jumping on a bandwagon because there are people that are genuinely getting affected by this, and there are people that are genuinely getting discriminated against, and there are real racists in America and in the world. And also, this might be a controversial opinion, America, as far as the most racist countries in the world, I think we're one of the least racist countries in the world. Because if you look at Asia, especially, even the Hispanic countries, I mean, Chinese people hate Japanese people. I think that they're lower than them and are less human than them. And Vietnamese people even lower than that. And it's the same thing with Hispanic people, where Venezuelan people don't like Mexican people or don't like people from Honduras because they think that they're not as good as they are. Where in America, we do all see each other as Americans. And of course we have there's an African American, but I think that even isn't, oh, you're less American. It's, I don't know if I can call you black because is that racist? And I think African American is a safe bet, so I'm just going to choose African American because I don't want to call you a colored person. I don't want to call you a black person. I don't want to call you a brown person. So I think I'm just going to go African American because that seems socially acceptable.
Yeah, I just go straight American.
Yeah, but you still have to go. You still have to go. So I was hanging out with my friend yesterday. You don't have to do this, but when you're describing
I'll give you an example. When I teach my class, I was giving statistics to say how do certain groups feel about the inclusiveness of their workforce, and I was controlling for all different types of workforce. Okay, so it was just based on the group, and folks like LGBT, 89% felt like they had to leave part of themselves outside of the walls of work. They did not feel like they could be their true selves and were truly included in there. And black was one of them, etc. And then even white heterosexual men, 49%, even though it was lower. But there was a difference. And I remember my slide said black. And as I was reading it off, I said African American. And an African-American man, older than me, pulled me aside during lunch. He goes, this is a great presentation. I said, thanks. He goes, just one thing. It's okay to call us black because we're black folk. And we know we're black.
Yeah.
But see, white people aren't sure.
Yeah.
Right? Is it wrong to say black? I'm not really sure. I've not been educated on this. And I actually really appreciated it, as much as I was embarrassed by it too. I said, thanks a lot because actually I know how to read the slide better now than I did before. But, to your point, Jack, of yes, we do need to figure out how we're going to deal with this. I agree. And I don't think it's enough, and I don't think any of us are saying this, that okay, this is kind of the way we are. This is the way our brains are. This is the way we respond to things that we're unsure of. It's part of the neurology and the physiology of our brains and all that. The solution isn't, okay, so, there's nothing to do here because there's nothing to change. So let's just keep things going the way they're going. No, that's not the right answer. We should always strive to be better. We should always strive to do better by our neighbor, right? We should always strive to do better for groups that are oppressed, even if if they need the support of people that are of the unoppressed group, or if we're the oppressed group, we should be looking for them and hoping that they will help, right? So I think that's all right and all correct. And the question is, what's the best way to approach that? What's the best way to do that? I don't know the answer to that, and I've thought a lot about this myself for since 2014, since I've been researching it, and I can't find a one bullet solution. I can't find all you need to do is.
Okay.
I haven't been able to find it. And a lot of people will ask me this question when they'll say, okay, Jack, thank you for teaching us about this. Now, what's the solution? What's the solution to what? What's the solution to systemic racism? What's the solution to systemic bias, even if it's unconscious bias, meaning in the larger society? I go, I have no clue. Because I really don't. But this also comes from, though, my bias of seeing society as this complex system that isn't just a linear system of you do this and then this changes that, right? And then, okay, I just got to keep this green and that will stay red or whatever it is. It actually, I keep it green and sometimes it's red, sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's orange. I don't know. I can't tell what's happening because other things are affecting it. It isn't just my one decision on that.
Yeah.
But what we can do is figure out, how can I live my life better? What can I do in my life to do things, even if it's hard, to change the way I approach how I hire people, right? What I put on, if I'm part of a company, how can I petition to have our applications not have race on it? Okay. How can I look around and see, well, gee, all of our conference rooms, like Google found this out, all of our conference rooms are named after scientists, but they're all male scientists except for one. And guess who that was? Who was the female scientist? Marie Curie, right? Everybody uses her.
Oh, yeah.
But, does that mean that there are no female scientists? No, of course not. It's just that they weren't trying hard enough, right? They just went back to their regular bias of thinking of science and male. And they made a concerted effort to try to make a change within their company because that was the ambit of their control. They weren't trying to change the laws in Washington. They were trying to say, let's change our company.
Right.
And I think those are the right ways to do it.
What
can I do in my family?
Which is actually what I'm talking about as far as not writing legislation, because there's really no legislation to write about this.
Well, again, as Will said, our legislation is pretty rich protecting the civil rights of individuals. And it's more on the interpersonal level that we have to work.
And that's a kind of exactly my argument, if you will, or for a solution is treating the country as an inner company, as we are all in this together, as far as we are all a part of this thing.
But that's
we call
just
America.
Renaming, not the government, but renaming, like, that's saying, like, well, we just got to fix, like, all of America. When I think what we really need to do is say, how can I be nicer to my neighbor? Or how can I be nicer in my, like, very small group of impact? Like, when I go to school, how can I don't know, set a better example? How can I be more inclusive? How can I, check myself and check, my bias or my privilege, or however you want to say it. And that's also not denying yourself of who you are, but also being like, hey man, this might, like the Confederate flags thing we were just talking about, being like, hey, I know there's a dude in my class or that I work with that gets really offended by the Confederate flag. And I just love wearing a Confederate flag hat, and I'm not being racist by it, but I know that really offends him. So I'm just not going to wear it because, I, as a Christian and as a human, care about that man, and I care about how he feels, and I want him to feel included because he works here too.
We completely agree, because and that's kind of what I'm saying is that how do we it's a cultural thing that has to happen where
that's not what we're not talking about cultural, we're talking about individual decisions. In other words, I should be able to wear a crucifix around my neck if I want, to Will's point, but my family were killed by Catholics because, I don't know, I'm making this up, right? Okay, should I hide my faith? No, I should be able to wear my crucifix. But out of charity, I'm going to put that in my shirt around my friend because I know how much that upsets him. That's an individual decision. That's not a cultural change.
Well, I think you can make the argument that the individual, just like an individual in a family, comes from the family, as far as an individual's perspective comes from their cultural surroundings.
Yes, but it seems like you're trying to fix it top down, and we're trying to fix it bottom up.
Yeah,
to where it's start with the individual, not with the culture, instead of trying to fix the culture and then it runs down to the individual. It's about every single one person doing what they can, and then the chaos theory effect of it will, change the culture. But it's really just like what Martin Luther King did, because his whole argument is, hey, we need to love each other more and be more kind to each other, but not saying
I'm not sure if you're seeing this exactly how I'm seeing it. I could be seeing it completely wrong, but how do you impact the individual? I think it comes from influence, Martin Luther King, and we have a lot of influence in our country right now that could influence that behavior.
But influence the individual, though. Not influence, not saying hey, everybody, we need to change our culture tomorrow or, in a year from now because our culture is the problem. What we need to do is have the conversation of, hey, we're all just being jerks to each other, and why can't we just be nicer to each other and find a way to be nicer to each other than saying our culture's the problem, let's fix our culture? Because the real problem is the individual.
Well, I don't think you can fix culture, because culture is the result of how people. It's like an organic development. You can't say, here's my blueprint for the culture that I would like to see. That's not culture. That's statism, really. Yeah. It's a planned society that says, okay, we are all going to be acting like this now. That's dealing with robots, not human beings. What you typically do is you say, like Martin Luther King did, saying, I'm giving you an aspirational goal here.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
But as individuals.
You're just wording it differently.
What I'm hearing from you, though, is that if Martin Luther King says that, and if Tim Cook says it, and if Jeff Bezos says it, that we're going to the culture will just change.
Not overnight, but there will be influence as to a standard to uphold, and I think that comes
sure. So I think everybody that has influence has the obligation to make sure that they're speaking truth. Mm-hmm. The thing is
which is not happening as of 2020.
But you also can't force people.
You can't say, Martin Luther King, get up there. I really don't have anything to say. Let me give you the words to say, but you get up there and you say these things.
See, I don't think you're understanding. So if I was in a leadership position, I would be meeting with these influencers and say, let's work together here. Let's come together, because we can all agree that we want to abolish this behavior or this perspective. So let's work together on how we
That's not what you said originally. You said you were going to say we're going to make sure that race isn't allowed to be talked about anymore in the United States.
That's not what I said. It
is. If you didn't mean it that way,
that's how it came across.
That is how you were talking about it earlier.
Okay. I actually wrote this down. That's not at all what I'm saying. Okay. And my third step, I was actually doing a step-by-step process, but this is how I would impact this situation is, but it comes from leadership. It comes from a leadership point of view where there's an influence on, if you want to change the individual, you have to have a leadership that lives that example. And it comes from someone who has a position of influence, by the word, like the definition of the word, as far as they have an influence on your perspective.
Yeah, but I also would say that everybody has influence on everybody 100%. Else to an extent. So I do say that I do agree with you that it'd be nice if a lot of influencers, as in YouTubers, started pushing this. But I really do think it starts with, even if I can only influence one person, and they influence 4 people, or they influence one person, and it just kind of ripples out. I need to be that example, and I don't need to rely on the influencers to be this example. I need to be this example, and hopefully one day, at some point, other people will start coming around. But it's really about what am I doing in my life, not trying to co-opt this organization to influence everybody, to make them influence
because
everybody.
What if you meet with all the influencers and they go, I don't agree.
Yeah. Then we're not getting out of the situation.
But
that's the whole point is you live...
The ship's just going down.
Okay. But again, I don't think...
Well, because it's happening right now. I mean, LeBron James, CardiB, Kendrick Lamar, all these people, Drake, they have this influence on people that is backing this movement that is very divisive. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be a common ground unless we talk to these influencers, because The whole, I mean, this is Joe Biden's part of his campaign. He didn't meet with CNN or anybody. He paid CardiB to have an interview because CardiB has over 100 million followers, and CardiB has the power to influence. If CardiB says, "I'm voting for Joe Biden and you should too," there's a percentage of 100 million people that are going to go in the same direction.
No doubt. But if your plan is to say, I'm just going to get a bunch of influencers in the room, I'm going to take my best shot at convincing them, and then we're going to see what happens, I can pretty much tell you what's going to happen. Because they already are coming to the table with their own ideas about what they should be doing.
Right.
CardiB already has an opinion about how he should use his influence.
Right.
If you think that he doesn't...
So it's a girl.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
See,
no,
I was lucky that I got the name right.
Yeah.
So if she... Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So if she knows what she knows where she's coming from. And it's wrong, I think, for us to assume that she's an influencer. She doesn't realize that she's giving the wrong influence. She doesn't believe she's giving the wrong influence. She believes she's influencing things correctly.
Right.
And so she's actually doing exactly what your plan is. She's living out your solution.
Well,
Just with the wrong message.
Exactly. It's the wrong message.
Yeah, but trying to convince everybody to do the right message isn't a board meeting. It's you show them about how by the way you walk. You know, you start with friend.
I think communication is huge. I think you're right in the sense that I have to be the example of it.
But I can't have a boardroom meeting and say, all right, we're all on the same page at the end of this. All right, meeting's over. Let's all change the world.
The other thing is, unlike a company, you can't kick people out of the United States. You can't say you're fired.
They disagree with you.
They would disagree with you. They're going to disagree with you.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that there's not the chance that they would disagree with me. I'm not saying that
I'm saying they all will disagree.
I agree with that.
See, I disagree.
No, I think that's an idealist point of view.
I personally think if I was in the leadership position to be able to meet with these influencers and come together and talk about a solution of how we're going to fix this, I believe that we would make more progress than anything that's going on right now in the country.
We'll agree to disagree on that because I just don't think that's going to go. I don't think that would go down the way you think it would go down.
If you're listening to this and you agree with my aspects, leave a comment. If you agree with their aspects, please leave a comment. I'm actually just genuine interested.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Would you guys agree if this would be a probable solution to what we're going through right now?
Right.
But I think some people will probably agree with you just in the same way they agree with, and I'm not meaning this derogatory, like you're anywhere close to fascism with but I'm saying like with any of these bad movements going on today, socialism, whatever, or even like being a Republican or Democrat, that they would go, well, yeah, if you just get everybody in a room and make them agree with you, then you can make anything happen.
I'm not saying, I don't like that you're saying make them agree. It's that we have to talk about it.
You're assuming though that by the end of it, they will be all in agreement.
I'm hoping, as far as I mean, as anyone can hope for a solution. I don't think a solution comes from one dictator. I think it comes from a multiple.
But if I may,
please,
you're the one that's writing the agenda for the meeting.
So you are the dictator.
Again, you have to understand that just like Martin Luther King did, is he's not. I'm not coming to these people and saying imposing my will upon them. I'm trying to work with these people, and if they disagree, that's completely fine. I'll back out. I won't. I won't.
Mm-hmm. But Martin Luther King got shot.
Yeah, that's also.
I mean, you know what I mean. There were people that he couldn't influence. He couldn't.
People
influence.
threw bombs in his house.
Yeah. But
my point is that he said what he said, but he didn't change a lot of people's minds.
But would you say that his efforts shouldn't have been done?
No, but I think that's what we're agreeing on, that individually we should do everything that we can within the scope of our influence to both say truth, to live truth, to model truth, to live life the way we believe that life should be lived, and speak about it openly. Okay. But to say, and then that's step one, and then step two, everybody will fall in line.
Not what I'm saying, though. I just not what I'm saying.
But you're trying to look for an end all be all solution to this whole thing when that one will never happen. I guarantee you, it's impossible. And it's just like really what we're saying is the best you can do is walk the way that you know you're supposed to walk in life and through life. And through friendship and kindness, try to get other people to walk with you.
I think we agree on that.
I mean, I think everyone in the world agrees with that.
We disagree how that meeting is going to end.
Yeah, it's just not going to work.
Which That's okay. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I'm seeing in my mind if just for example, if President Trump took the approach to try to unite these groupings just like he did in the Middle East, and he successfully did this between Israel and the UAE. If he did that in our own country, besides this,
they had economic political interest in sitting down with him.
And I believe but it's very divided in where Trump has zero interest in actually breaking ground with the left side, and the left side has zero interest in breaking on the right side. But if one side reached out with compassion, saying, "I want to meet a middle ground with you guys. I want to,"
but okay, so there's two things. One, we've got a left where the Speaker of the House is saying, don't even sit down and Biden and talk to Trump, number one. But number two, even if they were to sit down, what do you think would really happen?
I don't know what would happen, but I would not discourage that conversation from happening. You know?
Okay, so what if everybody sat down and then it worked out the way you think it's going to work out, but it's the opposite, and Trump says, yeah, you're right. Racism's a big issue. Screw the man. Let's go. Burn him. Burn it down. Burn it down. Pigs in a blanket.
Well, I think this comes back to, I mean, you can't bend your beliefs to the other beliefs. Just like
you're asking other people to bend their beliefs to your beliefs.
Because this has to do with their beliefs.
Yeah.
But guys, remember that we're talking about truth here. As far as if we were to take this from a Christian
but there are personal people do believe their own personal truths. There are objective truths. I agree with you, but I mean, there are people that believe being a sadist is a good thing, and that's like their truth. So, I believe that we're wrong about being Catholics.
I'm not saying, but I think you could convince somebody that your truth may have some truth to it.
Yeah, but
possibly.
Again, but it's really just a shot in the dark.
I believe
it's a shot. I think it's a shot worth taking, because I think that's how the civil rights movement eventually unfolded. I think that's how we got out of the Jim Crow laws, and we looked at. I mean, this is how it happened as far as we got.
But also, other than like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King didn't hold like a meeting and get all the world influencers, to talk. He got up on a stage and said, "This is what I believe, guys." He led by what he could influence. He walked his walk, and what he could personally influence.
And as more cameras came and more microphones came to record him, he had a bigger influence.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I guarantee you, for him, it started with him talking to his wife, and then to his friends, and then to the people at the store.
And eventually, he talked to Jack and Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Yeah, we got to do this." And LBJ was there. We got to make it happen.
But it wasn't this pre-orchestrated. Let's all get into a boardroom real quick or around a coffee table, and then say, okay, this is the plan, and if we do this right, the whole world's going to change. Break, and then go out and do it. But
it's not what I'm saying.
That's what I'm hearing.
I think you guys are completely missing the point then, because I'm talking about, I'm not talking about me right now specifically trying to orchestrate this as myself.
No, President Jack Manhire.
It could be whoever, though.
President Jack Manhire.
Let's say it's Joe Biden that gets CardiB and Little Nas or whoever and all these famous people into a room and does the exact same thing. It's the same result of what we're saying, is that that's just not how it's not feasible. It's not possible.
I think it is. I
Okay.
leave in the comments.
Yeah,
leave in the comments if you think it's not possible.
So I think what we have to agree on is, because I can't get a different answer out of you. We are agreeing that you are saying that's the best approach. We're disagreeing on what would happen as a result.
Yes.
Which I agree that the result may not be fruitful, but I would still take that shot. I would still make the effort to try to do that.
Sure, I absolutely. Because if I'm the president of the United States, I'm an influencer, and I could have an influence over people if they'd be willing to meet with me.
And that's exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is a tactic. I disagree that it's the tactic.
Yeah, that's not like the way to end.
There's a magic bullet.
So this is the alternative that I see, because this is direction, and this is real world. This isn't actually really theoretical, in a sense where President. This is what President Trump's doing.
You're not convincing us, and we're in this room together.
It's true.
And we're family. Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah, it's true. It's 100% true. I like I said, I have no idea if it would work. And if it didn't work, I would still have to take my role as president to do what I believe in.
And that's what you would do as president. And I don't think that would be wrong. In fact, I think it would be right. I think that would be the correct move. And I'd say, Jack, Absolutely. In fact, make sure you go in having plenty of meetings before with each individual, the meeting before the meeting. Make sure you're talking to their people and their influencers. Make sure that you're doing everything you can to make that meeting, or maybe series of meetings, as fruitful as possible, because so much is going to ride on your but here's what it's riding on it. So much is going to ride on your ability to persuade them. That's what's going to really matter.
And I just wouldn't bank on it as if there's one solution in the world that's going to solve all of our problems, it's going to be a meeting with the biggest YouTubers.
I also think there's too much tit for tat for what I can get out of a situation. Yeah. Like if I do what you want me to do, President, what are you going to do for me, and how does this benefit my views or ideals?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that they don't have that initially, that they think it's the right way. I don't think that they can just switch.
Yeah. What am I going to get?
I think it's what do I get out of it? Because I think our society is too much built on what do I personally gain from this?
The me. Yeah.
Instead of, well, we're just going to help society and we're going to be a better, happier place.
Which is what most people do. I mean, even if it's, what do I get out of this? I believe this is the right thing, so I get a chance to do the right thing. We're still doing it based on what our incentives. We still have incentives to do it.
So again, I don't want to keep going in circles if you guys are disinterested in this, but
I just don't think we're going to make any ground. I mean, I'm interested in it, but I think we've both made all the arguments we can to try to convince the other.
Well, what I'd say is that CardiB and then times 200 all got on board. There'd be plenty of people that would say, CardiB, you're a fascist pig.
Yeah.
It's possible, but so
I think it's 100% true though.
Yeah. But just hear me
because there are again people that hated Martin Luther King and still do to this day.
They shot him.
But collectively we grew from that.
We did, but it's not an end all be all. Racism's over because we got into a meeting. And
I also don't think Jack's saying this is an end all be all.
Exactly.
I think it's also more of there's two sides. I think we both or you and Jack disagree. That it's not. I just lost my train of thought. It's not an end all be all. You just have two different ways of how you would approach a situation.
Yeah, but at the beginning of this, the way this whole conversation started was
I have the solution.
I have the solution to racism. We need to stop calling each other black. Yeah,
we
need to say
Americans.
We're all Americans and
influence.
Yes. So that was the way it started. This is to fix the racism.
I do believe that it could work. And let me just explain why. Because the left has a moral compass. They want the best for the society. That is what, and that's what most people are drawn to the Democratic Party is that we're humane. We want free college. We want everyone to have the ability to go to college. We have everyone to have the ability to have free healthcare. We want the working class to be uplifted. We want to take care of people who are homeless. They have the moral compass. It's just the only thing is they don't have the understanding how to completely do that correctly, and that's where I think
that sounds paternalistic to me.
What does that mean?
Meaning, you're the wise father
but
who's saying, you know what, you've got some really good intentions here, but let me tell you that how it's not going to work.
And that's how a dictatorship started.
But I don't think you're hearing me exactly in the sense that if I met with these people, I met with the opposition.
I get that, yeah.
Okay, and I say, look, we want the best for our people. I want the best for what you believe, and I care about you individually. You want free college, you want free healthcare. Let me explain my position on why I want the healthcare to be in a free market.
How that happens every day. That's like the all of politics, and they go, all right, Jack, get off your high horse. We're doing it our way. Have fun in Congress.
But I believe there's an approach that's incorrect. I believe a lot of the right is coming from a very, hey, let me educate you on this.
But that's what you're doing.
I'm taking it as we're coming together and we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to hear your side, and then you're going to hear my side.
And I think that happens a lot. That's probably happened today.
I don't think anyone who has influence has ever met with President Trump or ever will meet with President Trump.
I mean, they do. I mean, what's his face?
LeBron James refused to go to the White House. CardiB.
Okay, but those are the people, again, they're refusing to go.
What's the crazy rapper?
But again, but look at
Kanye West. Kanye West is like best friends with Trump.
yeah. But look at what Donald Trump's approach to it is that, no, I'm correct, you're incorrect. The Republican Party is what...
So this very, very long debate is really boiling down to Trump should make more of an effort to meet with some of the influencers.
Yes.
I think that we can agree that that would probably be a good move.
I think.
But anything beyond that, I don't think we're agreeing on.
Yes. At the same time, I believe that what my solution is that move.
So solution sounds very final.
Well, okay.
That's like, okay, all done, wrapped up, packaged, here's a bow, done.
Well,
no more racism.
But correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm approaching to a problem, instead of trying to argue a problem, saying, I want to solve this problem. Can we solve this problem? And this is how peace deals get done. This is what Jared Kushner did in the Middle East.
Yeah, but again, these are individuals that are heads of state that can say, yes, make sure the nuclear bombs are locked down. You're talking about influencers, not heads of state.
And I think these influencers have a more power than they even understand what they have. And I think that if we came together like we treated the heads of state, we would see a huge difference in our
difference. Here's the difference. Heads of state can say on my own, yes, Jack, I agree. We're going to lock this down. This is for the best interest of my people. Everybody else, influencers have to change hearts and minds of each individual that they're influencing. Heads of state don't. But they just have to change enough to get reelected.
But if that influencer had a change of mind and she or he made that.
Sure, and if Trump could change hearts and minds, it can change it can change hearts and minds of everybody in that room that we're talking about. That would be fantastic, and yes, that would actually kind of flip the script in many ways for many individuals. But it would not be a solution, because when I say
wouldn't
solution,
that be a solution though?
That would be, hey, this worked out really well, and I'm glad that we got these other people to see that. Our approach was right and their approach was wrong.
Sounds like a solution to me.
But it's not.
Wait, but you're not just trying.
Though.
That's not a. Okay, but would you get 200 people in a room?
Yeah.
You have 3.5 million people. That's not. That's no solution.
No. But those 200 people have
that assumes that everybody's a drone and is going to say whatever kitty bang bang.
Really
does. You got.
I think
you're. In the comments.
No, I really think though
we do have to move on though, because this is boring to listen to.
This is kind of getting in circles.
This is boring to listen to. I do think
it's pretty hard. Yeah.
I mean, if Ben Shapiro said, Jack, BLM's right, you would say, you know, Ben Shapiro said BLM's right. You're right.
No, but I have the decision as a person of, okay, Ben Shapiro is saying this right. Let me hear why he's saying this.
And then, but people, they do that all the time. That's what podcasts are. And they go, no, because we're hearing you right now about why you're doing it, why you're saying this, and we're saying no. So
that's why you have a thumbs up and a thumbs down.
Yeah, but you have to. You're two people.
And this is 3 million, 300 million.
And plus, you have to look. I don't influence you guys. I'm not an influencer to you guys. As far as if CharlieKirk, for example, were to make
Charlie Kirk's not an influencer for me though.
But he's an influencer for me.
Nobody besides maybe Matt Fradd is an influencer for me.
Yeah, but also CharlieKirk, if he said something that was against your moral fiber, he would no longer be an influencer.
I just think everybody has such a variety of moral compasses that unless you have the same morals or even for us Christian beliefs, that it's beneficial for all of us to love and get along with each other, then it would all work out. Yeah. But since it isn't like that, there isn't just then it all just work out, because everybody will just disagree with each other. And I also do believe that nowadays it's a lot harder just to have a talk or discussion with people and to come to an understanding than it is just you're wrong, I'm right, I'm going to do my thing, you do your thing.
But sometimes that understanding, in fact, more often than not, the understanding is, I don't agree with you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, we can go have a beer, we can go take a walk, we can go to the zoo together and get some popcorn, and I don't hate you, but you haven't persuaded me that your position is correct.
Yes,
and this is the basis of debate, which has existed for thousands of years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
All right, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
That was fun.
And Jack's right. Definitely leave a comment on what you think, because if we can be divided on the discussion, certainly everybody else can too.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a third option.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about.
Yeah,
but definitely also if you thought this was a good show, hit the like button. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you share it too. Sharing it with your friends and family are great. Things like Facebook really gets us out there.
Seriously, share it.
Yeah, definitely. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified. We're putting out a lot of casts now. We're putting out probably more than one a week, plus our clips. So you want to make sure that you get notified.
Yeah.
We're going to call it a show for tonight. We're almost at 2 hours, and I think it's it's a good place to end it.
Oh, and let us know if you like the videos. It's our first video podcast. We'll probably improve it in the future, but yeah, this is just the first one we've done actually filmed. So if you like that or find it more enjoyable or have any notes or suggestions, please also leave those in the comments. Thank you.
Thanks, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I forgot that we were videoing.
Yeah,
halfway through.
What we got to start learning continuity. If we make cuts or something, we got to make sure our water bottles are the same.
Well, that's, when I said I'll cut something before, I wasn't thinking about the video part
continuity.
Too. Okay, all right.
No, that's okay.
One take.
One take, right?
Yeah.
One take live. All right, that'll do it. Thanks again for watching the Man Hire Show. Until next time, I'm Dad.
I'm Jack.
This is Will.
And Mike.
Sophie on the board. Thank you, Sophia.
Right, see you guys.
We'll see everybody next time.
All right, bye.